Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for this conversation about fostering girls in STEM to be women in tech. I'm Megan Turble with the Executives Club. I'm pleased to thank our speakers for being here and also our sponsors of the Business Technology Forum, Accenture and CDW, led by Bob Kress and Mark Lafferty. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn things over to one of our co-chairs, Mark, who's going to welcome us all to the event and get us kicked off. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Megan. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our virtual forum event on fostering girls in STEM to be women in tech. I'm Mark Lafferty, and this is my daughter, Brooke. I'm the Director of Data Center Solutions at CDW and co-chair of the Executives Club Business Technology Forum. I'm excited to welcome you for a discussion as how we as managers, business leaders, and family members can support the success of girls and women in technology. As some of you may know, our forum puts together a Women in Tech event each year with different panelists and a different spin on the topic. This year, we had planned to hold an event on Bring Your Child to Work Day on April 23rd and encourage our guests to bring their own children to learn with them during this conversation. Bringing your child to work took on a very literal meaning for many of us as we transitioned to remote work and remote learning, but hopefully some of you were able to wrangle your kids in to learn more with us today. Chicago has the potential to create an ideal pipeline for women in technology, top-notch universities, the highest concentration of female founders in the US, and business and civic leaders dedicated to retaining tech talent. Despite all this, we know that women still face undue barriers due to company culture, harmful stereotypes, and lack of support along their careers. Today, we ask how we can create an inclusive environment in both schools and businesses, which encourages women to enter and advance in the tech field. I'm very excited to have these expert panelists with us today to help us answer this very important question. Before we get started, I'm going to remind you of a few interactive Zoom features that you can use to join our conversation. We encourage you to use the chat feature throughout this discussion to share thoughts with your fellow participants. We'll have time for audience questions at the end of our meeting. Use the Q&A feature if you would like to ask one of the panelists the questions. You can also use the raise your hand feature if you would like to ask a question to the speakers. If you use this option, we can unmute your audio capabilities so you can speak your questions to the panel. Thanks again to all of you for joining us today for this important discussion. And thank you to our panelists for taking the time out of your day to share your insight with us. I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Renee Sang from Accenture, to kick off this discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Megan and Bob and CDW and Accenture for hosting the Business Technology Forum. I'm Renee Sang. I have the great privilege to be a part of the Accenture leadership team. We're an organization of about 550,000 people around the world that are continually looking for ways to be inclusive and help grow the careers of men and women alike in technology and business services. Throughout my career, I've been very happy to be a part of focusing on bringing technology and innovation together to solve business challenges for products companies. We launched the Accenture Customer Innovation Network, which is a series of innovation centers around the globe, and including the hub right here in Chicago. And that has really opened the door to interact with so many innovative female role models, new analysts, leaders, entrepreneurs, students and interns. I think I probably learned the most in our innovation center from our students and interns and new analysts that are really bringing fresh thinking. As well as being able to participate and interact with entrepreneurs from the Chicago area, the WISTEM Women in STEM program at 1871, the Chicago Women's Business Development Network. And I'm really excited and have enjoyed getting to know our panelists today, who all are very supportive of furthering women in technology and STEM fields. As Mark said, this Women in Tech event is an annual event hosted by the Business Technology Forum with a different spin every year. So this year, we're really going to focus on nurturing a better pipeline for young girls in STEM education and furthering their career opportunities to ultimately increase the representation of women in technology. The event was originally scheduled, as Mark said, on Bring Your Child to Work Day. I think one of the good things that's come out of the last few months has been the ability for so many of our kids to see their parents in working from home, to see what they do, interact as part of their parents' professional lives, and really learn about how business operates. So I appreciate the fact that the Executive Club opened this event to parents who are working from home and invited their children to listen in. So I want to welcome all of the sons and daughters out there. Thank you for taking your time to participate today, and thank you for your interest in this topic. I think you really have a unique opportunity coming out of this global pandemic to create a very different future. One that's probably not constrained by our expectations of the meaning of prom or graduation or the classroom or human interaction, but one that's really even better and probably fueled by science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So I want to start out with a quick round of introductions with our panelists and share their journey. I'm hoping that as you share your personal journeys and career paths, that everybody participating in this, whether a parent, a manager, an educator, a student, a CEO, you can all be inspired and find something that you can do to help achieve this goal of furthering girls in STEM and women in technology. So yeah, I'll start with you, Jasmine. So Jasmine Shell. Jasmine is all about employee engagement and charting a new course for employees. As a graduate of Notre Dame and MBA at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, she's a co-founder and CEO of 5 to 9. She's one of Forbes' latest 30 under 30. So congratulations, Jasmine, and welcome. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about 5 to 9 and who you are as a person and an entrepreneur.
Thanks so much, Renee. And, I really appreciate the Executives Club of Chicago and everyone for, really bringing this together, Accenture. I'm really excited for this today. So to give you a little bit of background of who I am and what my company is. So like Renee said, I'm Jasmine. I'm the co-founder and CEO of 5 to 9. And essentially we work with companies and we're an event program discovery, management, and evaluation software. So essentially think of any workplace programs you have to either develop, connect, or train your talent, from your new hire onboarding to your learning and development programs to your employee resource groups. Our platform manages all that in kind of one centralized tool, but then it also provides really powerful kind of metrics and analytics around the performance and the effectiveness of those programs. So I think one thing that's been really cool is during COVID-19 and kind of nationwide concern over racial equity and injustice, we've seen a spike in requests as companies are really looking to create programs and content that engages their employees virtually and also supports their diverse employees during this time. Fun fact, I'm from Ohio originally. I'm from Toledo, Ohio, so I've been in Chicago now for about 7 years, and I love it. I live on the South Side and South Shore, which is a beautiful community and neighborhood. So really excited to be here today.
And I hear you're quite the salsa dancer. So what are you doing? How are you doing that during this quarantine?
Yeah. So in college, I competed in different things, which was super fun. And in quarantine, it's a little bit hard. So I'm just either dancing by myself, typically, or just listening to music around the house. So I definitely can't wait to get back on the dance floor.
All right. You'll have to give us a little demo later.
For sure.
All right, Kress. So Kress Shabink is a fellow Badger, a graduate from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in mechanical engineering. And while growing her career at Shure and raising a family, she also completed her master's in engineering management from McCormick School of Engineering at Northwestern, and serves on the board of the Industrial Advisors for Northwestern and the Industrial Advisory Board for the College of Engineering at UW. And that's, I think we'll hear a little bit more from Kress about what a great way that is to be, stay engaged and connected with students and at the same time with our alma mater, and how that influences also setting diversity as a topic in the curriculum at those schools. So Kress, thank you for joining us. Maybe you can share a little bit about your journey through Shure, and especially as a female leader in an industry where I think there's, 3% of sound engineers are women?
Yeah, that's a really interesting stat. 3% of sound engineers are women. I hope everybody knows Shure. If we were actually all together in person today, we would be talking into Shure microphones. So you probably know us by seeing our products on stage. We also help facilitate a lot of business-to-business conversation because we're in AV conferencing. When you ask me about my journey, I think about going through engineering school, often being the only girl in a class, entering into the world of manufacturing, and then entering into, you know, the music industry, which we just spoke to, being pretty underrepresented when it comes to women, and same thing with AV conferencing. So I've often been in roles that are traditionally occupied by men. And, you know, I kind of reflect on the 31 years that I've been in this industry. And I think, you know, I have two key takeaways: that you can't be afraid to ask questions. You know, a lot of times if you're the only girl in a classroom of boys and you're 18 years old, you think you're the only one that doesn't understand what the professor's talking about. You have to learn early on to ask questions and not be afraid to do that. And then I would say once you get into your career, you realize that you have to be your own best advocate. A lot of women think that results, you know, show up on paper, on their resume, in their work. You know, putting the nose to the grindstone will get recognized. And, you know, I can talk a little bit later about some examples where that really doesn't play out. And if anybody's looking for a good read at the moment, I would say check out Women Don't Ask by Laura Babcock, and you'll understand why there's some good girl conditioning that happens when we're growing up and getting into our careers that maybe prevents us from being that advocate that we need to be.
All right. I think we'll come back to that topic around the cultural and socialization aspects, and how that, I agree with you, it sort of leads us down a path where we don't necessarily advocate and ask the right questions. Before we go there, why don't we introduce Anne? So Anne Young, congratulations, Anne, on recently joining the board of the Chinese American Service League. And thank you for all that you do as a director of Women Who Code. With a degree in computer science and mathematics from University of Illinois, Anne has made quite an impact in the Chicago market in financial services, healthcare, food service, and now is the Chief Technology Officer at Northwestern Mutual Wealth Management Company. Anne, can you talk a little bit about Women Who Code and your mission there and at Northwestern?
Sure. So I've been with Women Who Code for, I would say, about almost 3 years now. It's a global organization. The last that I checked, we probably have over 200,000 members globally. And in Chicago, I think we are probably in the 3,000 members within the network. So it is a network of women supporting women. So women in the tech industry supporting women. We host meetups every month. They range from career development, leadership, or even, you know, learning how to code, certain languages, Python, Java. Like, we went through the spectrum. So we host meetups every month, and it's usually sponsored by companies, you know, in the Chicagoland area. So we're looking forward to starting up those virtual events, and hopefully in the future we'll have the fun in-person events soon. The mission for Women Who Code is really to elevate women technologists into C-level roles. You know, I like to translate that as to women taking over the world, right? Like, so it's a huge mission, one that I'm passionately, you know, supporting. So, you know, I'm happy to be here, you know, for that.
That's especially interesting. I recently heard you describe yourself as a highly functioning introvert. Can you tell me a little bit about what that means, and especially in the light of women taking over the world?
Yeah, I mean, I'm your typical software engineer, right? I am, you know, like very, you know, lots of times, like, I relate to what Kress says about kind of finding your voice and don't ask. I think early in my career, I was your typical quiet engineer, and, you know, I'm an introvert. So, like, most of the time I'm perfectly happy being by myself. But as I, like, grew in my career, I realized that there is certain, like, socialism, socializing, building your network, you know, and being able to interact and build relationships with people, that is very important. So I've learned how to kind of come out of my shell as an introvert, and, you know, embrace, especially learning from some of my friends that are extroverts, how to be a highly functioning introvert. So that's kind of how I refer to myself as.
Awesome. All right. Well, along those lines, so let's talk a little bit about how you all got started in this field, especially, you know, with your backgrounds. So often I hear young people say, you know, my passion is not technology, my passion is really about art or entertainment or medicine or something different. And my guidance to them is always, you know, STEM or technology, it's not really a standalone thing anymore, especially in today's world. Every profession is really underpinned and fueled by science and technology. So to start, I thought maybe you could all share a little bit of a memory or an experience that you had as a young girl that sparked your interest in the fields you're in. Maybe we start with Anne.
Sure. You know, interestingly enough, when I was in high school or even middle school or even partway through college, you know, being in a STEM field or majoring in computer science was never an aspiration. You know, it happened my second year in college where I was, you know, your undeclared liberal arts and science major, and I was trying to figure out, like, what do I want to do? and as I explore the options, I talked to a really good advisor at that time. And she was the one that actually recommended, you know, computer science, because I really wanted to find something that was challenging, that was going to open doors for me. And then that was going to really enable me to graduate in 4 years. Because I think by that time I was, you know, like done with school. I wanted to just get out and work. So that's how I started computer science at the U of I Urbana-Champaign. And I was one of the very few people that was in that intro to programming Java class that had never done any programming before. So it's completely new, but it was fascinating, you know, for me to see and understand the different applications. So I would say for all the girls out there that, you know, never thought about it, you know, like try it out. And, you know, like, I'm so happy with what I picked right now, because it really did open many doors for me in terms of career optionality and what I can do.
Yeah, and I think it also speaks to, you know, some good coaching along the way and to bring you into it. Kress, maybe you want to share a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, thanks, Renee. You know, I'm really glad to hear Anne tell her story, because I thought I was going to be the only person saying that I kind of backed into my engineering degree in a way. You know, even though I contend today that girls, you know, need exposure to all aspects of STEM, especially what you talked about in terms of the creative element. You know, it's an underpinning of so many different careers you can go into. And me being one of the older people on the panel here, you know, back in my day, there weren't, you know, applied technology departments in high schools. You know, there weren't the organizations that do exist today that girls have access to, which, you know, heartens me to see groups like Girls Who Code and Tech Bridge Girls, Access for Young Women, and so on. I was a girl who excelled in math, and my high school counselor told me I should go into accounting. So, you know, with all due respect to the accountants and finance people in the audience, I don't think that would have been my forte, actually. And my dad encouraged me to look into engineering. He was in a technical field. And I was also thinking I was going to become an astronaut or a pilot. So I wanted to get an ROTC scholarship from the Air Force, and I did that my first year of school. To get the scholarship, I had to get into engineering. So I got into it. I didn't stick with the Air Force, but I got my engineering degree, and, you know, never looked back after that.
Oh, that's awesome. But actually, I have an accounting degree, so technology is business too.
That's right. That's right.
All right, great. And Jasmine?
Yeah, also another accounting major here. So we're taking over the call. To kind of share a little bit about my background. So my father, he's a CPA, he's an accountant. And I think as a little girl, I always wanted to be like him. So I definitely followed in his footsteps. But in addition to being an accountant, my dad's also an entrepreneur. So he's had his own small business doing payroll, taxes, and accounting for other small companies ever since I was a little girl. And I remember how that enabled him to, you know, take me to all these special trips and show up to all my programs and different things I was doing. I saw that it gave him a flexibility that not all parents had. And for me, that was really cool to see that my dad was his own boss, and also that, you know, he could come to everything that I had. So that was very special for me as a little girl. And I remember growing up, I was like, I'll never be an accountant, Dad. I'll never do it. So I went more of the entrepreneur route as a child, and I would like make things and sell them to my classmates. And then I think what's really interesting was after I graduated from Notre Dame, I considered on going the CPA route, but I got really interested in technology through my studies in undergrad. And when I started at Ernst & Young, I actually started working there in IT as a IT auditor and also doing some consulting work. So I think it's very interesting how different things kind of form your past, your present, right? Different things that kind of lead you on any path, right? So for me, kind of finding technology was one part inspiration from my father, but then also from all the experiences and exposure that I had through different internships or even projects that I picked up myself.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important part is that all of you really talked about, having people who are guiding and coaching and allowed for the possibility of taking a route that may not have been the standard route at that point in time, which, I think if we think about culture and socialization, I mean, there are an abundance of studies that have proven that girls and boys have equal aptitudes and abilities in math and science at a young age, but yet many of them don't pursue STEM topics. And as they get older, part of that is due to socialization. It's probably exacerbated by, stereotypes that reinforce the idea that boys may be better than girls at certain subjects like math and science. And then confidence starts to erode and confidence in their abilities, and therefore interest starts to erode. And then I think it's additionally compounded in college as you think about the ratio of men and women in a classroom. I mean, you talked about being in a classroom full of men and, forcing yourself to raise your hand and ask questions. And I think then, companies tend to recruit. In fact, Stanford research recently showed that of STEM graduates, 40% of men hold positions in tech careers, while only 26% of women do. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, what do you each think some of the biggest pitfalls are of culture and socialization, and especially around supporting the pipeline at a young age for both, men and women to grow in their school age and then in the professional context. Maybe Jasmine, do you want to start and just talk a little bit about your perception on socialization and culture, and maybe hit some things we can do to address it as well?
Absolutely. I think, I took this really interesting class at Booth called Diversity in Organizations, and essentially looked at kind of the drop off between like women start kind of in a career in tech, right, versus men. And there's kind of this concept of like gateways versus pathways. So gateways is when someone first arrives at a job, right? And then the pathway is how far can they get up in that career, right? Do they stay? What does their retention look like? And for women, the pathway, there was a dramatic decrease in terms of, them climbing the ladder and really looking to stay at a company, long term. And, when I was in corporate America, I remember seeing something very similar in terms of the partners who were at EY, right? Most of them were men. And I remember one of my mentors being a woman. I really asked her, I said, can you help explain to me kind of what's going on here? And I think one part of it is for, men to be allies in a way and make sure that, women are also getting the same opportunities. It's creating those opportunities and making sure that's just not going to your friends, right? Or other men, right? To really kind of stand in and make sure you're giving others opportunities. And I think, one of the other panelists also spoke just to like also women advocating, right? And going into the office and saying, hey, like, I want this opportunity. It really goes both ways. But, really looking at that data between the gateways and the pathways was really eye-opening to me. So I think there's one part that really speaks heavily to allyship, which is huge and really, really important, I think, in these situations. And I believe that is one huge thing that could really help in terms of some of the more pathway type issues that we've seen with the data over time.
I like that, pathways and gateways, thinking about it that way. Anne, any obstacles and challenges you see on the socialization and culture on your journey?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, similar story when I was in computer science, and U of I Urbana is big school, huge computer science program, but there were not a lot of women. I was one of maybe a handful that graduated during the graduating class that I was in. So I think like just, the pipeline isn't there. And I think like early on, I have a 12-year-old daughter. And I think like a lot of times, like just being able to see like role models and seeing other women doing, the jobs and, that are traditionally known as like to a girl, like at that age, maybe typical guy's job, right? But seeing a woman do it, like I think being able to see that role model is very important. So that's why I believe that these events where we are putting the role models in front of girls, so then they can see, what they can be, right? So I think for girls, there's awareness, especially in the past few years, with the initiatives around women in technology, STEM, we're really raising that awareness and sending the message out there that, for young girls, like you can, like even if you don't see, a lot of people that are like you in these roles, like you can still be, because there are people out there and showcasing that. But I would say that like in general, like in the corporate world, and I'm one of the few executive leaders in the tech space that are women. I'm trying to think if there's like one other maybe, like same level as me at my company. But I think the more that companies are aware, of the lack of diversity, and not just gender diversity, but racial diversity in technology and STEM, with that awareness, I think there can be change. And I do agree with, what Jasmine said about allyship, which is very, very important. And for all the, guys that are participating today and bringing your boys, with you, this shows great allyship.
Yes. That's such a key part of our partnership amongst our colleagues, that it's not only women sitting in the room solving, but that we have the allyship of all of those around us. Kress, can you share a little bit about your view?
Sure. I'll definitely amplify a lot of what Anne and Jasmine said. What reading I've done suggests that girls do peak in their interest in the technology fields available to them around middle school age, around 11 years old. And then, to your point, that starts to wane around the age of 15. And I think there's several things that play into that. First of all, I think there's a lot of gross misperceptions on what do STEM careers actually lead to. I have a pretty funny video that I show to people once in a while where 9 and 10-year-old boys and girls are being asked what mechanical engineers do, my degree. And it lies somewhere between we work with plumbing things to, maybe we fix things. So, and, the STEM brand, in my opinion, isn't probably the best selling pitch that's out there. I don't think people see the creative side of things. There are some folks that are trying to see if we could add an A into STEM to call them STEAM careers, to really give a nod to the artistic and creative element that comes with STEM jobs. Whether or not that will end up flying or not, I don't know. But I think the way that you get that message across is through mentoring, as mentioned. People often cite a lack of really predominant female role models. I don't think you need the big headliner names. I think if we as individuals can take on mentoring, I recently just mentored the girl down the street that was thinking about doing some engineering at Purdue next year. And we had some conversations about chemical engineering versus industrial engineering. It wasn't anything fancy or formal. It was just a conversation we had at lunch one day. I think if we can look for more of those opportunities and showcase what do engineers, what do scientists actually do, show them working in teams, whether you have them come in through your company and have a meeting with a team of engineers, or we've dispatched, some female engineers to go to some local schools and talk about acoustics. What is it? How do we make microphones for kids' favorite rock stars? And, it really does show the creative side of what engineering has to offer. So I think it's just really getting rid of those stereotypes of what engineering is or isn't, and trying to beat those social norms where girls they look out into the field and they see women underrepresented and they think, well, that's maybe not for me. There's not enough women there. So this cycle just keeps perpetuating itself that way.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I have an older daughter who is in architecture, and was very creative and artistic and really design oriented, and hadn't really thought about a career in something like architecture that takes advantage of that, but then layers in STEM. And I think that's so important to be able to understand that your passion can be fueled by careers in STEM, and showcasing those is really important. I recently saw, Megan, can you share the graphic? So many of you may have seen this, but I recently, a friend of mine recently shared this kind of perspective on success, which I think is an interesting way to think about it when you're, on the outside looking in, and a lot of times when you're young, you think success is kind of a straight line career trajectory. And really what it is a series of ups and downs and curvatures in the path. So I thought I wanted to get a little perspective from each of you on, just some of the ups and downs in your career and things that you've done along the way. So like Jasmine, you're one of the most, promising tech leaders in the Chicago market, and have really been breaking down barriers as a young female entrepreneur of color as well. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience in founding the company and raising funding, and what were some of the steps along the way that maybe caused you to question or propelled your career?
Yeah, I think starting a company is it's not an easy thing. I know when I was leaving my job in corporate America, my parents were like, "Are you kidding?" They were very supportive, but they were just like, "Oh, tell me more," right? Because it's a very risky path. I know when I was first trying to get the business off the ground, we were applying for different accelerator programs, which are essentially like 3-month, typically programs where in exchange for equity or ownership in your business, they give you funding or money. And it's surrounded with all this programming content. So me and my co-founders, we were trying to get into these programs. And I just remember, we just kept getting declined. I remember we even applied for Techstars here in Chicago, and we made it to the final round. And it was the furthest we had ever kind of gotten in the process, but we didn't make it. It was like, we were like company 11 and they only chose like 10 companies. So it was this very, very long process that kind of made me think, wow, it's like, is this the right path? Are we actually going to be able to pursue a business? But also we have lives, right? We have to be able to pay for our bills, all these different things. So we finally got a big break, which was great. We were funded by this VC, this program out in New York City. And me and my entire team, we moved to New York. We left Chicago, moved to New York, and we lived with one another in apartment in Brooklyn, sharing one bathroom. It was 4 of us. So I was like, if my co-founders and I can do this, then we can do anything. And I think that experience really just showed me that you have to be resilient. You have to keep trying. You have to hear for the rejections and the no's, what's the why behind the no? I think that's what really helped us to continue to pivot and reposition our message to where it resonated with investors. And after we completed that program, we were able to go on to raise our seed round, which was awesome. Definitely for the fact in 2018, only 2.2% of all venture capital dollars went to female founders. Only 2.2%. So to give you perspective, there's this company called Jewel that raised or got 10, I think it was billion more than all female founders did combined. That's like crazy. So, going down this path is definitely like not an easy one, but it's possible. You just have to be very resilient and listen to the rejection and the why behind it. So yeah, that's a little bit about my founding story.
That is a great point, that not to get caught up in the emotion of the no and the rejection itself, and I think for the young people out there, you'll experience that as you go through application to college, applying for jobs. There'll be regardless of what you do, there's a series of ups and downs along the way, and getting behind it and why did it happen is great advice. And as you have both an impressive role as the Chief Technology Officer for Northwestern Mutual, and also as the Director for Women Who Code. From your perspective, and as a director in Women Who Code, what are some of the number one resources that women in STEM careers are looking for? Is some of the challenges that they run into? Maybe you've experienced those along the way, as well as what do you see in some of the women that you're supporting?
Yeah. I mean, I think the sense of community is really what, the Women Who Code Chicago network provides. I think it sometimes gets hard when, you're on in a job or in a company or in a role that, when you look around, you're like the only woman, right? Like sometimes like that, introduces the self-doubt, right? Like that you have in your abilities and your confidence. So having other women that, have similar roles, jobs, or similar situations, and having that sense of community and being able to kind of create your tribe, I think is important. So I think, one of the things about organizations like Women Who Code or, Girls Who Code, like with the younger girls that are interested in, coding or STEM, like having a sense of community and having that network where they can meet other people that are similar, like that support is very important. And I would say like barriers or even just ups and downs, like I have them every day. Like I feel like sometimes I don't get so hung up on the title or, or things like that. But, the career path, like there are days that you just feel like, the imposter syndrome kicks in and you're like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't do this. But I think it's important to realize that like, it's not going to be always perfect, and it's okay if it's not perfect. You can just have the, grit, right? Like the, the persistence and, like to kind of get through it. And, kind of focus on that instead of focusing on, all the negatives. Like I think sometimes some positive thinking, helps, and not be too focused on perfectionism.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure, Chris, you've experienced this as CEO for the world's largest manufacturing of audio electronics. And as you've risen through the ranks over the last 20 plus years, how do you think of the environment has changed for women over your tenure? And how is, some of what you're doing at Shure and what other companies can do to help, continue to grow and inspire women, I guess, in their career in tech?
Yeah, well, I've been in audio and technology for 31 years. So to your question, yes, I've seen a lot of changes. And as I mentioned earlier, I am encouraged, by groups that are spurting up, organizations that girls and boys can tap into around technology. And I think what companies can do is, maybe a little bit of putting your money where your mouth is. We have a lot of different organizations that we support, both from a product as well as a financial perspective. We talked earlier about 3 to 5% of sound engineers being women. There's a fantastic group out of San Francisco called the Women's Audio Mission. It's the only recording studio in the world built by women for women. And roughly, I think 2,000 or so underserved women and girls go through that Audio Mission Institute every year. So they're looking for careers in STEM, they're looking for careers in audio. We get a lot out of it by putting stuff into it because we have people that hopefully eventually want to come work at Shure. Other things companies can do, I spoke to mentoring, and I believe, that either formally or informally is really an essential and kind of low-hanging fruit thing we can all do. Aside from the one-on-one kind of mentoring, establishing resource groups is another way to get like people together. Maybe it's just a really simple brown bag lunch. It could be facilitated. People can talk about their common interests, and the company provides a safe environment for people to talk about everything from the job to work-life balance, their common experiences. Definitely see more and more resource groups popping up at companies. So all of this is, just making sure that you're providing the right environment for people to be able to express themselves. And like I said earlier, be an advocate for yourself as well.
And I see there's a question, Althea. It says, what percentage of your company is that? Are you referring to the resource group?
Percentage, I'm missing that, Renee. Sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, the question was, what percentage of your company is that? And I think it's a question around what percentage is supported in the resource groups. Is that what the question is, Althea? I'm waiting for an answer, but
that's okay. Yeah, I was just kind of using that as a generic example. You know, you can do the one-on-one mentoring, and also, yeah, I know Jasmine also has a lot of content on her website about forming employee resource groups at companies. So just a general statement on my part. If you're not doing the one-on-one, you can always form the resource groups to get common people together and talk about common problems.
Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, another question we have here. The biggest challenge we have in finding funding and finding women talent when we have openings. Do you have any suggestions of programs, organizations, schools, etc., to connect with to help find talent? And it's directed to any of you. So again, the question is, how do you find talent? Any recommendations on programs, organizations, or schools to connect with to help find women with talent in the STEM fields?
I was going to say it's difficult, right? Like, I wouldn't say that it's easy because we are always constantly hiring. So it's difficult, but I think there are, things that, companies, talent acquisition teams can do. But, Women Who Code, actually has job boards also. So you can connect with them, and, with so many women that's part of the organization, such as Women Who Code, you can probably get like a good pipeline there also. But I would say that, it's tough, but then there's also like other venues where, we think about, like, for myself personally, we've been working with different organizations where people are transitioning their careers, like career changers, like where, we get some diversity there too. So non-traditional route of coming into, engineering or STEM, where they are going through the boot camps or going to an intensive apprenticeship program. So there's definitely resources, I would say, like if you went, online, or even work with your talent acquisition team at your company.
Yeah, I was just going to echo what Ann said. There's so many organizations that you can find online. We haven't mentioned yet the Society of Women Engineers, Association for Women in Science, and those are websites that I just go to stay in tune with current trends and so on. But they also provide good ways of making connections as well. So really understanding the organizations that are out there to help support the networking that your talent team already does with the schools.
Yeah, and lastly, just to add on to that, I know there's some really awesome conferences that I've attended in the past that are going to be virtual this year, so makes it easy for you to attend them all because they're virtual. One is Grace Hopper, which is really great. Huge focus on women in technology. It's awesome. The curriculum's awesome, and a lot of folks who do attend that are looking for, career positions and things like that. Another is include.io. So it's very heavily focused on women as well, in tech. That's a big one. And then here in Chicago, there's this Slack group called the Brave Space. It's really focused around diversity and inclusion, kind of in tech and technology. So a lot of folks there will post different offerings. So those are just a few that I know that are very focused on women and also focused on diversity and inclusion.
That's awesome. And I think there was a question about, can we get, what are some of those websites? Maybe we can collect them and send out a list afterward of some of the references you all just made. Okay, I think we have a question from Kavita, I think is a student. Kavita, you raised your hand. Do you want to ask a question of the panelists?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for speaking today. This is awesome, and it's so great to hear all of your stories. So I'm a rising high school junior, and I was wondering when you shifted from a purely STEM major to STEM and business in your careers.
I can start. I did it about 7 years into my engineering career, and it actually was due to a little bit of misfortune. I ended up not getting a promotion that I thought I was going to get. So I mustered up enough courage to go ask the divisional vice president, why hadn't I maybe been considered for that new management job that had opened up? And I was told that nobody had any clue that I was interested in management potentially, and I didn't have any education in that way. And did I want to maybe think about pursuing a master's degree? So I kind of accidentally found a new mentor who helped me find the program that Renee mentioned earlier, the Masters of Engineering Management at Northwestern. And, had somebody mentor me through that program, and eventually was, because I spoke up and said I wanted to get into business, and I liked that degree because it balanced engineering with business. I wanted to still pursue the technology backbone, but it was only because I asked, why wasn't I considered for that?
Yeah, I would say that it wasn't something that I did intentionally. Quite honestly, I was always very interested in hands-on coding, and then even when I was individual contributor as a software architect, I really enjoyed that. But it was really someone that saw the potential in me, saw the leadership capabilities, and kind of pushed me into it. Because I remember when I was offered the role, I really wasn't I think my response was I'll think about it. It wasn't, I said it wasn't part of my career plan. and I think, looking back at that, I was like, oh gosh, I was so stupid. But the reality is that I don't think I intentionally went into it, was the shift. Because even now, from a leadership perspective, I think, there's a lot of need to understand the business context. As a technology leader, I think if you don't understand the business context and you don't understand, how your business makes money and what they're trying to do to drive their growth, you can't really build out, software or technology strategies that would enable them to be successful. So I think it just really goes hand in hand. So it's not like if you move into a leadership or a business role, you forget all your technology, or if you're just technology, you don't have any business or leadership or management, right? It's together.
Yeah, and I would say I went the opposite direction. So I was like business, business, business. And then I had an internship at 1871 here in Chicago. It's like a tech incubator. It's amazing. I was introduced to all these other young entrepreneurs who are building out tech companies. I was like, wow, I didn't know as a non-technical person, right, coming out of college, that I can actually put together and found a tech business. So I think it's interesting the different paths you can take, but it's really, I think, that exposure that leads you down one path or another. So 1871 was an awesome experience for me, and I definitely recommend people to go check it out if you haven't.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Along those lines, actually, one of the questions is, could IT boot camps be a way for women to break into IT careers? Do your companies hire boot camp graduates? Any experience with that?
Yes, definitely. So I'll keep it short.
All right. What advice can you give to elementary and middle school science teachers?
One thing that I would say, so before I started my business, after I left EY, I actually worked at this nonprofit called Future Founders. So I actually went into classrooms and worked directly with middle schoolers. Would go into science classrooms or math classrooms, and I would teach about entrepreneurship. And one big thing that I would say is a huge thing is, you may have that student who doesn't seem like they want to participate, or says that they hate science, or, they're not good at it. But one thing that I would definitely encourage all teachers to do is encourage your students, definitely the ones who may seem a little bit more, hey, I don't want to participate, I don't want to raise my hand, or I don't think that I'm good at this, just to let them know that it's okay to not feel that you have to have every answer right all the time, and it's okay for things to be hard. I saw that through the curriculum, the entrepreneurship curriculum, when we went in there, some of the students who were the most quiet actually were the most vocal, and it's because they had an opportunity to learn something new in the show, hey, like I can participate. I can, if I feel safe to share and if I feel that, you know, I can contribute in this way. So I think that would be a big thing I would say is, you know, just let students know that it's okay. Definitely the ones who may seem a little bit more reserved about science.
And I would say, you know, make it fun and have them work in teams. And if, you know, if something goes awry with an experiment, I think it's a great learning opportunity, and it's something that's going to happen, you know, when they're in real life, I guess. So break it down if something goes wrong with the experiment. But, you know, I don't think it's hard to make it fun either.
Yeah, I agree with, you know, what both Chris and Jasmine says. I think that age group is interesting. Like sometimes you don't think that they take, I can say that because my daughter's in that age group, and you don't think that they're listening or they're taking in anything, but they're soaking it all up like a sponge. And, you know, the more that you can encourage them, make it fun, it really resonates.
All right, and I think we have time for one more. When inequities between gender in certain STEM-based areas are prevalent, what pushed you to go for and find up the opportunities you have? When you were faced with inequities in gender, what pushed you to go forward and find the opportunities that you now have?
You know, I would say it's not like one thing, but, you know, one is I think it's the love for what I do. You know, I kind of just happened to discover coding and computer science, and I really love it. And I like the creative aspects of it, being able to create software, and different companies I work for create software that really is very meaningful, and that people can use it and, you know, make their lives better. And so, like, to me, it's like the love for what I do. So I feel like I'm lucky in that respect. So no matter like what are the things that come at me, like if they're challenging, I kind of figure out, like, I'm so focused on, you know, solutioning and solving. Like, I don't let a lot of things get in the way. Like, because I think sometimes, like, when you get really caught up in, you know, the personal, like, feelings or, like, you know, getting down, like, you can't really focus on the solution. But I think my personality, I'm just one of those people that if I hit a barrier or a wall, the first thing I think is, okay, how do I knock that down? Like, how do I solve this? So it's really just like the love for what I do, and then this like constant need to maybe solve the problem and fix it. Like, I think sometimes it could be a good thing or a bad thing, but I think in my career it's been helpful for me.
Sure. All right, Kress or Jasmine?
Yeah, I'll add to that. One thing I would say is don't be afraid to ask for help. I think that that's something I had to learn the hard way because I'm very independent and I'm like, yes, I can figure it out. I can do this. But some moments to get where you're trying to go or to, you know, kind of see what's the next step, you have to be willing to ask people for help. And I think that's okay. So it took me a while to get there. Definitely when it came to fundraising and asking people to invest in the business, right? Like that was very hard for me to go out and make those asks. But I talked to people who did it before and they're like, look, like they helped me reframe what fundraising was in my mind. They gave me tools and kind of language I could use to do it. So I would say ask for help. It definitely has helped me a ton in my kind of career.
Ask for help, and I would venture to say that we probably all have a little bit of a competitive streak too. And you know, if there was a moment where we got knocked down a little bit, well, we dusted ourselves up and tried again. So some tenacity helped along the way.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you all for those words of advice. I guess we're gonna wrap up in a minute here with Bob. Before we go to that, any rapid fire last comments that the three of you would like to give to either girls who have an interest in STEM, parents who see an aptitude in your daughters, or companies that want to make a more inclusive environment?
I'll speak to the parents first. If you have a girl that is showing that interest, see if there's any way you can get them connected with somebody maybe that you work with who can be that role model or that mentor that we were talking about. It doesn't have to be a long engagement. one hit wonders work here. A good sit down lunch, a good conversation about interests, but make that connection. Let them see some role models and let them understand what people in these fields actually do on a daily basis.
I would just speak to it broadly is that, even sitting here and having this conversation with this group is huge progress. So I feel like, it took us a long time to get to where we are. So it's gonna not be solved. It's not gonna be something that's gonna be solved overnight, and it'll take us a while to get to where we need to, but just, staying positive and continue having these conversations, and encouraging, the girls in your life, not just your daughters, but any of the girls in your life. I think we're on our way there.
Yeah, and I would say one thing that I think is super powerful, even sitting here listening to Kress and Ann, is, to share your stories and just to share your perspectives and your experiences. It creates an environment of knowing that you're not alone. You're not the only person going through this. And if you can really create that atmosphere, then that makes people say, wow, I can do this. Girls, like, yes, we can do this. So share your stories. They're powerful.
Thank you. Bob, I'll hand it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Renee. Good afternoon again, everyone. I'm Bob Kress. I'm a managing director at Accenture, and with Mark, co-chair the Business Technology Forum. This has been a tremendous discussion, so please join me in a virtual round of applause for our fantastic panel and for Renee. Thank you, everyone. And specifically, thank you, Kress, thank you, Ann, thank you, Jasmine, and thank you, Renee. And I need to be careful here because I could probably talk for 10 or 15 minutes, but I've been around the technology industry for many years, and I've seen many different changes in how organizations are approaching recruitment and retention of women. There's just several things which stuck out to me today that all of you mentioned, and I've personally experienced. One is start early. So I think a couple of you mentioned, you need to start, with middle school. I would tell you, I think you need to start even earlier than that. One of the roles I also play is I chair the board for the College of Engineering at the University of Iowa, and we've created STEM outreach programs specifically targeting girls and diversity. And what we found is you really need to start in 4th or 5th grade, because like it or not, kids at that age already start to form opinions about whether or not they have an interest or they can do these types of things. So I would encourage all of the parents and adults on the phone, start early. Nowadays you can purchase games for kids that are 3, 4, 5 years old that in essence begin to teach them coding, simple coding, and they're awesome. So start early. Second, I would say, and several of you mentioned this, don't hesitate to ask questions, be aggressive, advocate for yourselves, because I do think I see it a lot that women oftentimes are more reserved and aren't as aggressive. And like it or not, that is detrimental in terms of helping you move up the career ladder. So be aggressive, ask for help. The importance of having mentors and sponsors and role models can't be understated, and that's from a very early age, I think, ongoing throughout your career, because you need that. You need someone who can provide you with an independent perspective and help you along that ladder. I loved it when I can't remember which one of you said tech opens doors for career options. Absolutely true. And what we see, and all of you see, I'm sure, is virtually every role in an organization today has some element and component of technology, whether it's data and analytics to generate business insights, whatever. So it's really critically important, I think, for us to encourage all of our children, and in particular girls, to get involved and look at technology as creating opportunities that will give you more career options. So great discussion. We hope you found this information helpful to carry you through the rest of your week. Please keep an eye on the Executives Club website for more upcoming virtual programs. In particular, we hope you can join us on August 6th for a discussion around board governance, merging profit and purpose with professional services forum, and a very special event tomorrow with Mayor Lori Lightfoot. So that's tomorrow, the 16th of July. You can sign up online at www.executivesclub.org. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and hope to see everyone soon. And thank you once again for the panelists and for Renee for moderating. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Chris, Jasmine, and Ann.
Thanks, everyone.